Feel it again.
You got some wild highlight reel knockouts. Some wild fights. I remember the first fight I ever saw of yours, I think it was in 1997. I think you just posted it on Instagram, or someone did. It's like me interviewing you backstage,
Yeah.
like right after the fight. 97.
That was in 97?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. That was when I first started working for the UFC. I think that was a tournament back then. Yeah, what year is that? Does it say?
Oh, shit.
UFC 17.
It was 17, yeah.
Yeah.
That was, 1997. No, 98.
98.
I fought in 97 in Brazil in a tournament, and just to make some money to keep wrestling, and then I did the UFC a year later.
Who talked you into doing MMA in the first place?
Well, Randy and I were training partners forever for wrestling, and, we'd always watched it on TV and said, that'd be fun, but I don't know if I'd want to get in there with some of those 300-400 pounders,
Right.
Those big fuckers. And Randy called me up one day and said, "Hey, I'm doing this tournament down in Brazil at heavyweight, and they got a lightweight tournament." And this is like 2 weeks before. And you want to go do the lightweight tournament, which is it was like 176 or something. And I was like, well, okay. And I was wrestling 180 and a half at the time, so it was an extra 5 pounds. But, I went down and did it. But in the meantime, I guess Randy had already put an application into the UFC, and they said no, and which I didn't know he put in the application. But then he got a call, somebody got hurt, so he didn't go down to Brazil. He went to the UFC instead. It was like within a week before, a week after that fight. No, not that one, but the one down in Brazil, which was, I think it was UFC 13 was his first one. And
I was there for that too.
And he had a tournament against the two big heavyweights.
Yeah, he fought some big muscular guy the first fight who had a lot of hype on him. And I don't remember who he fought in the second fight. I don't remember. But that was like when we first started seeing elite wrestlers.
Right.
First started seeing Royce Alger, Coleman, all those.
Did Kenny Monday fight in the UFC? Or did
Yes.
Yeah.
Kenny Monday. No, was it Kevin Jackson?
Jackson.
Kenny Monday fought. He fought submission. I remember Matt Hume submitted him.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
That was I think I wrestled with Frank Shamrock.
That's
there.
right.
And I had a screwed up ankle from I rolled it right before the World Championships a month before that, and so I went in there wearing wrestling shoes so I could hide the tape that I had on my ankle. Frank's pretty good at ankle locks, so
yeah,
that was me not knowing anything about it.
Well, Frank was really one of the first guys that had like a full overall MMA game.
Right. No, I agree.
Really did. He had when he submitted Kevin Jackson, very impressive. He could submit you off his back. He had crazy cardio, full range of skills. He could strike. He could grapple. He could do everything.
Right.
And the cardio, he was like one of the first guys that showed cardio could be a weapon, like the Tito Ortiz fight. His cardio was a real weapon.
For sure. And Tito's usually in pretty good shape, too.
Yeah, well, Tito learned from that fight. I think that was a big wake-up call for him, that how much cardio plays a factor.
Yeah. And it's a different pace from wrestling. So that was something we had to learn. Wrestling was a little bit higher paced, a little more action, shorter durations though.
Right.
So I had to learn to kind of pace myself a little bit when I first started doing this.
When you first started doing this, what were the distance of the rounds? Was it 5-minute rounds?
No. The one down in Brazil, I think, was a 15-minute straight round, and then maybe a 15-minute overtime if there's no submission. Then they go to judges. But I didn't go. I think I went like 7 or 8 minutes. The first fight with Crazio was my first fight. He was like a black belt, which I didn't know a whole lot about. After watching that fight again nowadays, it just, I see so many mistakes that I did, and I didn't know how to punch either. I never sparred before. I never sparred before I fought in the UFC on that one you just put up.
Never.
And then
really?
I started
just
sparring after that. Well, no, I hit the bag and hit focus mitts, and it was just kind of awkward to punch your friend in the face, you know. But after that, it was like, me and Randy were like, fuck, we need to start sparring.
That is so crazy. You guys didn't spar at all before
No.
the first year. That is wild. That's wild. So,
I was off balance a lot, you know, getting hit, falling down because, you know, when you don't spar, you're just not, you don't have the same balance, or
yeah.
it's just a lot better to practice the way you fight.
That's so crazy that you fought the first. So did you have a striking coach?
Yeah, we had boxing guys and kind of kickboxing guys that would come in, but there was no coaches back then, MMA coaches, I should say. And then we just started really figuring out what works really well with our styles and, you know, takedown offense and, you know, setting up strikes.
I think the first real MMA coach was probably Militich. It's probably Pat. The first guy
Pat and Matt Hume.
Yeah, Matt Hume. Good call. Yeah. Those are the first guys that were really putting it all together.
Right.
You know? I mean, and even back then, guys kind of didn't know exactly what the right... I mean, now, if you go to ATT or one of these big gyms, I mean, they have protocols. Like, they know exactly what they're doing. They have training schedules all mapped out in advance, hard days, easier days, technical days. I mean, they really have it down to a science.
Yeah.
Monitoring recovery. It's kind of crazy when you think about your first fight, no sparring at all.
Well, yeah, my first 4 fights, because there was 2 fights each one of those events. So.
And then in the UFC, you fought Carlos Newton, right?
Yeah, Carlos Newton and Alan Goes, and then Carlos
Newton.
Yeah.
2 very elite submission guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carlos Newton, people forgot about him. That fucking guy was good.
Yeah, no, he was tough.
He was good. Real well-rounded.
He broke my jaw.
Did he really?
Yeah. Just toward like a last minute of the fight, he kind of hit me. It didn't daze me or anything, and then, you know, shortly after, 5 seconds later, I took him down. And when I took him down, my chin kind of pushed against his chest, and it kind of shifted, and I'm like, ooh. that doesn't feel right.
When did you realize that you had that kind of crazy power? Because it's kind of funny that a guy who started out grappling and didn't do any sparring at all for his first 4 MMA fights was one of the most dangerous strikers in the sport.
I don't know. I mean, I grew up playing baseball and threw really hard. And then, you know, when I started and not sparring, started MMA, you know, I'd hit the pad or, you know, focus mitts, and everybody'd say, oh, shit, you hit hard.